After a weekend of earthquakes and earth tremors and of course tsunamis and all that we saw during the weekend, we are back with much more. This is Business Cafe. We are coming to you live from Mombasa Road, Nairobi. My name is Brian Jodotieno and I'm with my colleague. Very well, Brenda, we have a lot lined up, right?
Yeah, of course. And today our key focus is the economic situation in Uganda. We did see, of course, the governor of the central bank over there who passed away yesterday. And we will be giving you more details in relation to this.
Very unfortunate right there, but we'll be giving you details. Of course, we'll try to get hold of our correspondent in Kampala, Uganda. But first off, let's inform you of some of the news. Now, residents of Mutebile South in Embu County are asking the national government to fast-track the completion of a 3.1 billion shilling road project to ease access to the region. Residents say the 63-kilometer road was set to be completed in 2019, but stalled halfway. Moige William has the details.
Road, a tarmac road network connecting all the 5 sub-counties in Embu, from Embu North to Mutebile South, passing through Embu West, Embu East and Mutebile North sub-counties. The 63-kilometer road, whose construction began in December 2016, remains at 80% completion, creating a disparity between two parts of Embu County. On one end, the road stretches from Embu Level 5 and Teaching Referral Hospital in Embu West through Kenjokoma, Embu North, to Chicago in Mutebile North, giving access and benefits to residents. But on the lower end of the road linking Mutebile North to Mutebile South, residents are yet to witness the construction of a single kilometer of the project. They continue to endure dusty and bumpy roads as the 3.1 billion shilling project seems to have stalled.
Na ukiangalia pande ya Mutebile South sisi, ile kitu tunaweza sema inasaidia wananchi. The common mwananchi ni miraiko mingi. Na pande ya huko Mutebile, upande ya Tana River watu wanalima mazao huko, lakini kukinyesha mazao hayawezi toka kwa shamba. Na bado tunaambiwa sisi ni watu wa serikali.
Hiyo ring road tulikuwa tunaambiwa, tunasikianga ilisha kitambo. Mahali imepaki ni kutoka hapa njia ya Chicago kupita Machanga kwenda Makema mpaka Makutano. Hiyo area ndio imetengwa kando kidogo. Si hatuoni kama kuna usawa, na tunasema kama serikali inaweza hata kabla ya hiyo uchaguzi wiki tutengenezewe hiyo barabara.
Na hiyo barabara hata watu wa Mutebile South hawangekuwa wakisumbua watu Embu na jam, wangekuwa napitia Makema, through Karaba, Nairobi. Na ingekuwa very easy.
Leaders and residents now trading blame on who is responsible for the project that stalled 2 years ago, despite the national government promising to fast-track its completion in 2019.
The leadership here has not found it fit to follow with the national government. Absolutely none at all.
It is a question of marginalization. It is a question of actually political and economic marginalization for reasons best known to the top leadership of the county. Actually, Makema ward per se has never known a single meter of a kilometer since the ward was created. And we are wondering, now that President Uhuru is actually winding up, and the other day we saw the deputy president at Kairori saying that the ring road is complete, and yet the bit in Mutebile South has never been touched. We do not know what completion meant.
Residents of Mutebile South sub-county now calling on the government to expedite the completion of this project in their area. Moige William, KTN News, Embu County.
The governor of Bank of Uganda, Emmanuel Tumusiime Mutebile, is dead. Mutebile died yesterday at Nairobi Hospital. He was 72 at the time of his demise. Now, the economist had served as governor and chairman of the board of directors of the Bank of Uganda since 2001 and had just started a new term of office, which he was reappointed to in 2021. A seasoned professional economist, a reformer, Professor Mutebile spearheaded the design and implementation of the economic reform program that restored Uganda from the economic crisis of 1970s and 1980s to sound economic performance during his service as the permanent secretary to the Treasury in the ministry responsible for finance, planning, and economic development. Of course, we have seen central bank governors of the East African community countries, send their messages of condolences, journalists, various government dignitaries. Brenda.
Of course, it is a very sad day for the East African community and matters economy, because this is just a person who had very strong financial reforms that he introduced to Uganda, as well as the wider East African, economy. But these are just some of the reviews that we had so far in relation to what the central bankers are saying. So speaking following the sad news, Bank of Tanzania Governor Professor Florence Luoga said being a long-serving central bank governor in the region, Professor Mutebile played a vital role in guiding discussions in our EAC's Monetary Affairs Committee meetings and contributed greatly to where the EAC Central Bank's cooperation is today. The National Bank of Rwanda says Mutebile will be dearly missed for his great contribution in fostering cooperation and integration among our central banks in the EAC region. And here in Kenya, the governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, Dr. Patrick Njoroge, says Professor Mutebile served as chair of the Monetary Affairs Committee of the East African Community in 2017 and 2018, and ably led our discussions as the current chair of Monetary Affairs Committee. I also extend the heartfelt sympathies of my fellow East African Central Bank governors. We will miss his wise counsel, experience, and gentle humor. So Professor Mutebile was the chief monetary, fiscal and economic advisor to the government, introducing several policies like monetary policy, inflation targeting and many others. Now he will be remembered for speaking out against the government's high appetite for debt, cryptocurrency and closure of financial institutions deemed underperforming. Of course, we are supposed to be joined by Hakim Wapamba, who will give us insights in just a short while. But Branji, I mean, this is a guy who made a lot of contribution in the East African community, but most probably his impact was felt in Uganda, considering that the country has had quite an interesting state of affairs when it comes to the economy.
Definitely, and of course, due to the political happenings back in the day, which related closely to the economic situation that Uganda was in the 1970s and the 1980s. Remember, at that time, there was a bit of instability coming from the then regimes. We're talking about the regime of the late Idi Amin Dada. Of course, him driving out the Asians out of Uganda, and he was Professor Mutebile, who is the late governor now, was actually very vocal in speaking against those actions by the government of the day back in the day, to the extent that he actually, fled for his life. He actually went on exile, and of course, I think his sound economic policies, Brenda, stemmed from a point of experience. Of course, one of the biggest things we have seen with his life is his career, which spanned over over 30 years as an economist. But this did not just happen. He started off at Kigezi Batobere, if I got the pronunciation right, Kigezi Batobere College right there in Uganda. Then later on went to Makerere University School of Economics, and then after that went to England in the University of Durham, and then Oxford University. He was a professor in his own right, served for a couple of years, 1992 to 2001, as Secretary of the Treasury Ministry, thereafter now being appointed as Governor of the Bank of Uganda, served for 20 years, Brenda, the longest serving African Bank of Governors.
I mean, yeah, quite an interesting state of affairs, because he is a man who has been at the helm of Bank of Uganda and introduced quite stringent reforms. Remember, he spoke against cryptocurrency, something that, I know you have a passion for. But at the same time, he also spoke out against institutions that are government-oriented, that are not doing well, and saying, hey, look, these institutions need to be closed down because they are not performing. And at the same time, of course, he was also vocal in relation to the debt. Uganda, just like its African neighbors, say for Tanzania, has had quite a number of infrastructure projects that have been in construction over the last 10 years. And this, of course, has contributed to high debt, even as the country continues to borrow to finance this project. So we did have the governor, the late governor over there, saying that, hey, our debt is spiraling out of control and we need to tame it. So he was such a smart chap, like you said, his career spanning from, Oxford University, and he had all these economic reforms that he had put out in place. So just like other East African governors are saying, he will be missed for his wise counsel, and at the same time, I mean, it's a really sad state of affairs.
Definitely, and of course the multilateral lenders, the concessional lenders like the IMF, World Bank will also miss him because he was a consultant. We are keeping our eyes on this one. We'll be giving you the full details, but from us to Ugandans and of course the larger East Africa community, our sincere condolences. Let's get to something about farming. Camel farmers have a reason to smile after the Kenya Agricultural Livestock Research Organization, CALRO, concluded a 3-year intervention research on camel with the aim to control and manage camel SARA disease. Now, the disease is caused by a parasite that multiplies in the blood and body fluids of camel and whose fatality rate is nearly 100% if left untreated. With funding from the African Union and European Union to a tune of 100 million shillings, CALRO and partners in Somaliland have been carrying out intervention research titled Intensifying Camel Productivity Through Integrated Control of SARA within the Somali ecosystem of the Horn of Africa.
Speaking during a media tour in Isiolo County, the principal investigator in the project research, Dr. Judith Chemuliti from CALRO Biotechnology Center, said they have been collecting data to develop a disease control strategy that will ensure the disease is effectively controlled.
One of the greatest challenges to camel keeping is a disease called trypanosomosis. This disease affects camel, it reduces the amount of milk that camels produce, it causes death, and by doing so, it affects livelihood.
In Kenya, Dr. Chimuliti said the project was conducted in camel-keeping areas in Isiolo and Marsabit counties and focused on 5 camel-keeping communities viz. Somali, Borana, Turkana, Gabra, and Rendile.
What we are seeing is very high prevalences of this disease, up to 40% in some areas. Yeah, but on average, we are seeing prevalences of about 10%. But this, of course, varies with the site. It also varies with the season. We are advising farmers, once you control the disease, then you have more milk. So the other thing that we are also encouraging farmers and advising them is how to dispose of these products. We are working in the counties of Marsabit and Isiolo.
Dr. Chimuliti said once they find a sick animal infected by the parasite, they treat it immediately on site since transmission from one infected animal to a healthy one is detrimental. She added that they also go to the bushes to see what kind of flies are affecting the camels and advise farmers on the best practices to use.
So what farmers see, usually the first sign that a farmer sees would be an animal that gets tired, and an animal that is producing less milk, an animal that is not feeding very well. So those are the first signs of that the animal will see. And what we're encouraging them to do is when immediately they see this sign, then they should reach out to the county veterinary office or any other qualified veterinary personnel.
One livestock keeper, Jackson Tololo, said they had been treating their own animals with conventional drugs because of lack of knowledge on the disease diagnosis, transmission, and treatment.
Anakataa kula na pia anawashilia machozi kwa macho na kukohoa. Hiyo ndio dalili.
County Director of Veterinary Services in Isiolo County, Dr. Joseph Morira, acknowledged the challenge of the Sura disease that is spread by tsetse flies being a major problem, saying last year on average they had 451 cases of trypanosomiasis, and out of this number, 95% were in camels, specifically from Kina in Garbatula ward.
Around 148,000 camels, and they are distributed mainly across the 3 counties, sub-counties. We have 3 sub-counties in Isiolo County. We have Marti, we have Garbatula, and we also have Isiolo Central. Our major threat in camel production is trypanosomiasis, which is brought by biting flies. Among them, we have the tsetse flies. Tsetse flies are concentrated around Kenya area, but in these other areas, we have the biting flies, and these ones increase in number when it rains.
Kenya is home to around 3 million camels, and despite the challenges of diseases, They are considered an important resource to many pastoralists inhabiting the environmentally harsh ecosystem also in the Horn of Africa. They are able to withstand droughts better than other livestock species and continue to produce milk, a key source of nutrition and income for the pastoralists.
Coral reefs are some of the most ecologically and economically valuable ecosystems on our planet. Covering less than 0.1% of the world's ocean, they support over 25% of marine biodiversity and serve up to 1 billion people with a wide range of ecosystem services such as coastal protection, fisheries production, sources of medicine, recreational benefits, and tourism revenues. However, they are also on the front line of the climate crisis due to their sensitivity to warming seas. But as our coast-based reporter Tobias Chanji reports, scientists and marine enthusiasts have started restoring back coral reefs by having nurseries in the ocean.
Coral reefs are classified as the tropical forest of the ocean. They are basically rocks with a living tissue on top, meaning they can live by growing or degrade, which is basically dying.
Coral is actually a rock. People think it's a rock. It's calcium carbonate. Also here in the background, all the rocks you see used to be all coral, live coral. And the skeleton is on the inside, but the live tissue is on the outside. So if my hand would be the coral skeleton, then the glove is the live tissue of the coral itself.
So what we do, we dive into the ocean and we look for corals of opportunity. These corals are found on the bottom of the ocean. They can be broken off by fishing activities, by waves, or by sea turtles resting on them. We take these broken coral fragments and then we put them in coral tree nurseries. You see coral tree nurseries here in the back, and we hang them in there.
Working under the revolution with the main mandate of restoring or bringing back to life the corals, Vodgel and Pap have set up a coral reef nursery on the seabed of Diani, Chale Marine Reserve, which is about 75 square kilometers. It takes about 1.5 years for corals to grow into large colonies again.
The large coral colonies that we harvest from these nurseries, we take them to artificial reef structures like bottle reefs and cakes, we call them. These provide a substrate where fish also can hide into and where the corals can grow into larger coral structures, and then baby fish can actually grow into larger fish, and that will help the fishermen to have more food and catch for nutrition for the community.
It's also called the tropical forest of the sea because they provide as much life as the tropical rainforests do in the Amazon. And therefore, if we lose this ecosystem, it might be the first ecosystem we lose with lots of marine life.
Coral reefs, which are like the tropical forest of the ocean, offer breeding habitats for about 25% of marine life, which therefore means that without it, mankind will be in trouble too.
I think there's 3 major benefits to mention here, because the coral reefs, they have a very important role for the community. The first one is that it provides food and nutrition for the community, for the fishermen to get their catch, for fish what is healthy growing in the reefs. Secondly, it's important for erosion, so they will stop eroding the beaches, they will stop eroding the coastline, and a healthy reef will stop the waves from smashing into the beach. And if the beach erodes, that will leave not much space for tourists to actually enjoy the beautiful beach of Diani.
According to Peter Vodgel, a marine biologist, 1 billion people around the world depend on coral reefs for their livelihood. But currently 50% of the corals have degraded or died due to bleaching, due to overexploitation and pollution.
They expect that by 2050, 95% of all coral reefs might be gone. As 25% of all marine life depends on coral reefs, this can have a huge consequence for all marine life in the ocean, may disturb the whole balance of ecosystem in the ocean and have a huge consequence for all the 1 billion people depending on coral reefs and the animals thriving in coral reefs.
In South Coast alone, 60 to 80% of coral reefs are degraded, a major cause being the climate change.
The biggest enemy worldwide for coral reefs is climate change. Climate change is causing the waters to heat up, causing the corals to live in a much heated environment. It's like the corals would have a fever, and if we personally would have a fever for too long, we would also die.
This is the true representation of what is found in the seabed. And when coral reefs are degraded, this is what human beings will lose. Tobias Chanji, KTN News, Diani, Kwale County.
Many thanks, my colleague Tobias Chanji, for that report. Brenda, you have been, drooling over that, saying it's a good report.
It's a very good report, considering that, they have been disappearing from our ocean, but the nurseries should help in terms of restoration activities. But Chanji, we are focusing on small, medium-sized enterprises tomorrow.
Definitely. Of course, we'll be having some good data for you and, of course, interesting stories covering this now that we had set the pace between the small and medium enterprises and startups. Tomorrow, do join us. Same place, same time at this same show, Business Cafe, where I'll be telling you all this. I am Brian Jodutieno.
And I'm Brenda Kerubo. Thank you so much for having us.